Good evening, ladies and gents, wherever you may be around the world, and welcome to Splendid Isolation number 77. Before we get started, I shall, as I always do, start us off with a bit of a tune. Okay, that was Men of Harlech, which is one of the regimental marches of the 10th Hussars, which is now part of the Royal Hussars. Mitch, Adamant, how you going, chaps?
I'm doing all right. Same old. That's what you should say.
And you, Adamant?
Yeah, I'm good.
Good stuff, good stuff. Right, have you got a first subject you'd like to bring up, Adamant?
Did you want to talk about this Joe Owens clip now?
We can do it. We certainly
Yeah.
can do it.
So I mean, for anyone that doesn't know, Joe Owens, who everyone should listen to, he posted a video.
YouTube channel is called Joe Owens Talking Sense.
Yeah, he posted a video. What was it? 4 days ago now. It was earlier in the week.
Yeah, it would have been probably about 5 days ago, actually, but yeah, something like that. Yeah.
About the wins that Le Pen made. Yeah. So she gained 85 seats, which is nothing to scoff at. That's way more than what they've got before. Which is also largely due to like voting composition and oddly enough as well, another point to bring up is that in France it's almost the reverse of what we have here, which is that over there it's the young people that vote for the sort of more conservative parties, and it's the older people that are sort of a bit more sort of centrist. And so he basically made the argument that it's that that we can still essentially vote our way out of this. That the populism's still got is still the way ahead. I mean, it's kind of like with Trump, right? With Trump, a lot of people are quite hard on him, and I just think, well, he's got a role to play, right? He's part of a chain. He's not the guy, but he's a guy. He's someone who's going to lead us down that road. Similarly, in American politics, Ron DeSantis, he's not going to be the guy, but he's also going to have his part to play. And similarly over here, Nigel Farage is not done yet. He's not. You can't count him out yet. There's still work for these people to do. So I'm not sure if I'm going to say that we can vote our way out of this, but populism's definitely still something that we should work, within.
Yeah, I put the link to that Joe Owings video in the chat, by the way, guys, if you want to go and check it out. Yeah, I think I'm entirely in favour of populism. It's certainly better than like some other people who are black-pilled and just say, look, we can't do anything, basically, or don't vote. I don't see how that does us any good, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, especially with like a vote's free. I mean, you might as well use it, even if you're actually just doing something quite subversive with it, voting for the crazy monster loony party or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, look, my deal is don't support conservative, in inverted commas, candidates who are pro-EU, who are pro-LGBTQ, who are pro-mass immigration. Don't support those guys. That's all I say to people. Don't support those people. Look at what your MP does or what your candidate says. And just because they're conservative, don't vote for them for that reason. And if they're actually on the right of the Conservative Party, as about maybe 50 or so Conservative Party MPs are, by all means vote for those guys. But the others, no, you've got to stop.
Yeah, I mean, there is a risk. I mean, there's a certain former academic in our circles that recently wrote a book about delusions of populism, which I haven't read. So he might have gone over this better than I could do. But there is always a chance that if you tie up your movement into populism in any way, people they do get sucked along with the momentum. They do get sucked along with the whole fanfare of the thing, and you end up with huge amounts of energy being put into something that could be a dead end. You see this a lot with like Boris. Huge amounts of people who consider themselves like radical or dissident writers were all going out there saying vote for Boris because they ultimately wanted to see Labour take the L. But you end up putting power, literally putting populist power and energy into movements that are counter to your values.
Well, I mean, the certain academic who you were talking about was one of those people who suggested people should go out and vote for Boris, by the way. So, let's remember that. I just think that in general, if you're on the real right or the dissident right or whatever you'd like to call this very loose grouping of people, I think you'd be better off in the UK supporting one of the smaller populist right of centre parties, whichever one in your area has the most chance of actually getting anywhere. I still, as I've said for way over a year now, I still think all of those parties need some sort of loose coalition, at least when it comes to elections, because otherwise that's what's really holding them back, because they're fighting for the same votes, basically. And people need to start looking at what their Conservative MP actually supports.
Yeah, I mean that's of course another problem with our party system is that you could have a really good like Edward Lee. You could have Edward Lee as your local Conservative MP, and he's definitely someone you'd vote for. But you're still giving a vote to the Conservative Party, which is Boris Johnson ultimately. So you end up, even that can bite you in certain ways.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, the system we have is not perfect, and it certainly ain't really any sort of democracy. I don't think anyone thinks that it is anymore, really. But the system we've got is the system we've got, and we've just got to try and make use of it as best as we can. And I think one way to do that is for people to actually start looking at Conservative MPs' voting records. And if they're not really Conservative, and most of them are not really, frankly, including Alexander Johnson, the Prime Minister of Ukraine, as I now call him, don't vote for those people, I mean, Alexander Johnson absolutely cares more about Ukraine than he does Britain, and he's proven it time and time again. He even spends more British taxpayers' money on the defence of Ukraine than he does on Britain.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's an issue. So yeah,
I
I
know
mean,
one. I know one thing that we were talking about on the Discord about the Joe Owens thing was he brought up the example of Sinn Féin,
yeah,
the so-called political wing of the Provisional IRA, which of course these days is totally globalist and entirely in favour of third world immigration into Ireland.
yeah.
But Brits, South, Somalis in, that sort of thing. But I thought that was not a good example, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, it does seem because I mean they were going to lose if we hadn't had a subversive government here in Britain. They would have lost. I mean,
Yeah.
you're probably more knowledgeable on this than I am, but I didn't think there was a way they could have won that without Tony Blair stepping into the rescue.
Yeah, and there was a division. They basically lost the actual their so-called military campaign, which was basically sniping people and blowing up civilians for the most part. But they basically lost. I mean, the provisional IRA was riddled with British informers and what have you, paid for by the Brits, and they were on the very edge of losing when Tony Blair and that wank Bill Clinton from America stepped in and saved them, as you rightly say.
Yeah. So that kind of seems like, because that's of course the problem that we're going to run up against. Like, if you got any good populist movement off the ground, it's going to be immediately counter signaled by sort of our establishment, which is sort of American centric. And indeed, you saw this. When Nigel Farage was trying to bring about Brexit, we had Obama fly in and try to sort of counter signal the movement, and they were certain at that point they were going to win. If they thought they were going to lose, they would have done much worse than just that.
I agree with that, but I'd also say that's only going to be the case if you've got a Democrat US president or a Rhino US president. If Trump had been president at that time, I don't think that would have happened at all.
Yeah. Yeah,
and I mean this will bring us on to something we're going to talk about, and it's related because it's populism, I suppose. It's going to bring us on to something we will talk about a little bit later on, which is the Roe v. Wade thing in the States.
Yes.
And of course, Roe v. Wade would not have happened without Trump's judges being placed on the Supreme Court. So to say Trump did nothing is actually not true.
Yeah.
And of course, it's not being reported widely in the UK, but just before that judgment on abortion, there was another judgment from the US Supreme Court, which is in favor of people being able to carry guns in America. Yeah. Which again would not have happened without Trump placing more right of center judges on the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I mean, one of the criticisms, I mean, I said this, funny enough, because he's back. I said this on a stream with someone a while ago, which is actually on my own channel, I think. And people were saying, the Conservatives are really bad at picking Supreme Court judges, which is partially true.
Yes.
And they would say, oh, well, why didn't they step up and help Trump at the time? Well, ultimately, they're not going to stick their neck out for a guy who's only going to be in power for another 4 years at most. And then they've got to put up with the Democrats coming in, packing the courts and ruining their life, essentially, ruining their future careers.
Well, look, I'm not American, Adam, but I would say from Americans who I follow, people like Don LePleve, etc., that it looks like the Democrats are going to get a big-time wipeout in the midterm elections. And they might, depending on the degree of corruption and involved, they might get wiped out in 2024 at the presidential level. And we'll see. And if that happens, then that's going to change a lot of things in America. But it's also going to it's going to change things generally, because, like it or not, America is still the leading place in the West.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to depend a lot as well on how certain outlets play this Roe v. Wade thing. Because, I mean, we talked about this, I think it was last week with George, and we basically said, like he said, the Republicans will gain some seats, They won't gain a lot. The Roe v. Wade thing is going to probably hamper a little bit of what they could have won. I'll be honest though,
I don't think it will.
if people like, let's say, your Tucker Carlsons, our guys in pulling at certain levers,
Hmm.
if they can spin some of this outrage porn the right way, they can mitigate a lot of those potential losses.
Yeah, I mean, I think it will motivate quite a lot of people on the right, or it should anyway. It should. So I don't. And I mean, look, the right in America isn't going to win the big left-wing cities. They're not going to win them. It doesn't matter. So people getting outraged there, it doesn't matter. Don the Pleb was saying on a stream he did with Paleo-Angloism that if cities get burnt down in America, they're going to be left-wing American cities. They're going to be burning down their own cities. It's not going really to affect most of the people on the right. Now, obviously, this channel is totally against all forms of violence and all forms of burning people down and all the rest of it.
I'm not.
Well, yeah, but you're not the channel. You're only speaking for yourself. You're forgetting, Adam, and I got a hate speech strike the other week, mate. I've got to be careful.
Yeah, of course.
It's like they're only going to harm themselves. In other words, is what Don the Pleb was saying. And so I think that's also going to be the case in terms of the Roe v. Wade thing, and also the pro firearms judgment that came down. This is going to encourage people on the right. It's going to piss off people on the left, but the people on the left ain't going to vote for the Republicans anyway, so it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, I saw an absolute banger of a tweet actually, where the guy said, "The great irony is that tonight Democrat cities will be burned down by Democrats in Democrat states where abortion will still be legal."
Exactly true. And God's Own Prototype in the chat is also saying this. I sometimes watch this Todd Praiser-Foley guy, and he said that his decision will help shift a lot of recently moved Dems back out of the red states into the blue. Just for people in the UK and in America, it's reverse of what we do in the UK. Red states are conservative, blue states are left wing. Just because the Americans must do everything else about face, but there we go. It will be at least another sorting mechanism. And yeah, he's right, because if you're a feminist lefty woman in America, you ain't going to want to be in Texas, for example. So it's and a lot of potential Democrats had been moving from California to Texas over the last few years, and I think this is going to stop at least the lefty people from doing that. I mean, I know some right wingers from California have also moved there, and to me that's fine. But
yeah.
If you got anything to add to this one, Mitch?
In terms of let's say Roe v. Wade, I mean, I'm just looking at, I'm looking at Antifa. All they're doing is just blocking roads and beating cars if the motorists don't stop.
Yeah, and they're doing it. They're doing it in their own left-wing cities where abortion's still perfectly legal.
Yeah, Los Angeles.
I mean, another thing I think we need to, actually, let's not do it now because we're going to talk about this in a little while. But let's keep it on this Joe Owens thing. So I don't think the Sinn Féin comparison was a very good one. I think there are holes in that. But I do think he's right that what the Marine Le Pen doing so well in France proves is that populist parties can still break through. I mean, I wish to God any real right of centre party in UK could get 80 MPs, for God's sake. And obviously, France has a different system to us. They don't have a first past the post system. But you can go back to the 1990s when what's his name? The bloke who I like. What's his name? Adam, he's just drifted out of my head. The stream I did with what's his name, Eddie Butler on.
Oh yeah, with Jonathan Bowden.
Jonathan Bowden. When Jonathan Bowden was active in the BNP were doing pretty well, and were definitely threatening to break through in terms of getting an MP or two, had they been able to keep that momentum going.
Yeah, I actually almost. I mean, this is going to be a bit of a probably an unpopular opinion for good reason, but I actually almost think that the right's in a better position now than it was under the BNP.
I'm sorry, I missed that one, mate. What did you say?
I said I think that the right is actually almost in a better position now than it was under the BNP at their height.
Oh yeah, yeah, it is. It's more fragmented. Is the only problem.
Hmm.
I mean, like the BNP were the big group at that stage in the UK. I mean, the BNP had its problems in terms of optics and what have you, for sure. But these days, I think our problem on the right in the UK is that, and this is true also in other countries like Australia, for example, the right is very fragmented. That is the problem. And we spend more time arguing with each other than we do making allies, which I think is what we need to do. I think the right needs to be fairly big tent, certainly at this stage, because we have no real power and we need allies, not even more enemies.
Mm. Yeah.
I mean, I suppose it beggars the question of how big a tent do you want it to be in terms of, let's say, I don't know.
Well,
I
don't like seeing Christians and pagans arguing and Christians and atheists arguing at this stage, all right, about general stuff like, oh, let's stop mass immigration, all right, because that's got nothing to do with whatever your religious beliefs may or may not be. So long as you're against stopping immigration, I don't care, frankly. If you're going to talk about this LGBTQ stuff, if you're against that, again, it doesn't really matter what your religious beliefs may or may not be. If you're against that, I'll happily take your support. I don't know if that makes sense to people. It certainly makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, well, we can. I mean, look, you can't be a modern British or Western person and not be culturally Christian, because you are. I don't care whether you call yourself a pagan or you call yourself an atheist or whatever. You're culturally Christian, whether you like it or not. I am, just because that was the milieu you were brought up in. But it's becoming weaker. I don't think you can argue against that. I mean, I think I could make a fairly strong case that most people in Britain these days, and I think it's also true in Australia, are barely Christian anymore. I mean, I remember at the last census in Australia, I actually put down that I was Church of England, even though I'm not really, just because the atheists were trying to get people to say you were atheists. And I thought, no, fuck that. You know, it's, I just think that we've got to stop this sort of internal stuff that stops us cooperating. I have issues with some people who support certain mid-20th century Germans, but if they absolutely do, then I find it very difficult to cooperate with those people. If, on the other hand, they are third positionists who are more in a position of supporting somebody like Mussolini, then I could probably live with that. But they'd have to make that clear, if you see what I mean.
Mm.
Because because the Italian fascists were very different from the German National Socialists.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm for including as many people as we possibly can. Because if we don't, we won't get anywhere.
Mm.
But on the other hand, if someone's going to come out and say to me, no, I'm right wing, but I'm in favor of LGBTQ, whatever, then sorry, no, I can't cooperate with you. Just can't.
Yeah, I mean, it's the problem with that is that I actually think the bigger issue in the right is all the Fed accusations.
Well, yes, absolutely, but I mean, you see why they happen, because you get people coming out with just stuff that is too hard to believe. I mean, I see it with both Americans and Brits, and you see, I can think of at least one British guy who comes out with the most outrageous shit, but never ever gets touched by anybody. And like, to me, that's deeply suspicious.
Yeah.
But, if you give your favorite book as Mein Kampf, followed by two Americans, one of whom was the head of the American, the American Nazi Party, and the other one was a Ku Klux Klan guy. And, nothing happens to you.
I don't think he's a Fed, though, because something has happened to him. I mean...
listen, when I say someone's a Fed, all I'm saying is that they are in some way, shape, or form doing some sort of quid pro quo with somebody like MI5. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, I distinctly remember watching a stream quite recently where you were admonishing the person from the chat about the guests that they have on, and this was this former academic again, but he did raise quite a good point, which is that actually the person that's more likely to be a Fed is the one that's actually had run-ins with the Feds.
I see. I don't really believe that. Like, I go on. I know because I go on with what happened with the provisional IRA, which we were talking about a few minutes ago. The provisional IRA were riddled with British informers, some of whom were just doing it for money, some of whom were doing it because it kept them out of jail, and they were riddled with it. And the guys who were doing it because it kept them out of jail. Well, obviously, there was evidence against them, and many of them had been arrested. But you see, the thing was in Northern Ireland, so many people were briefly arrested. The provisional, and that was one of the reasons it was done. It was impossible for the provisional IRA to really work out who'd been turned and who hadn't.
Yeah.
I mean, again, John Commonus in the chat saying, I'm of the opinion that fascism and National Socialism are not the same at all. Absolutely correct, mate. They're not.
No.
And go and read Paul Gottfried's book about fascism.
Career of a Concept.
Yeah, and
I read that just a couple of months ago. It's an absolute banger. He really deals out some red pills in that.
Yes, he's excellent. I really like Paul Gottfried. He's a very old chap these days, but well worth watching if you can find him on YouTube, etc. And that book absolutely proves that they are two different concepts and not very closely related in many respects. Like there was no mass murder in Italy so long as Mussolini was in charge. The mass murders in Italy happened when Mussolini wasn't in charge at the end of the war.
I would say there was more corporatist elements to Italian fascism than German National Socialism.
Yeah, I mean, everybody from Mussolini on downwards, they nearly all started out as socialists or Marxists.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say before you carry on, Ottoman, that God's own prototype is correct. Semir Gob is right. Take it as a default that someone's a Fed until they prove they're not. Yes, you can't go far wrong if you do that.
Yeah. So anyway, going back a little bit to the Roe v. Wade stuff, I saw a Reddit thread which I thought was quite interesting. Do you want me to read it out?
Yeah, go for it.
So this is on Reddit, so you can kind of probably imagine what it's going to be like anyway. It starts, the radical Christians are found in rural areas. Their towns are defenseless. They have almost no cops and their firemen are volunteers. They have to borrow cops and firemen from neighbouring jurisdictions miles away in order to handle anything big. And they think they're safe out there. Forget burning cities. Cities are on our side. It's time the rural areas feel the heat. By the way, Susan, I'm quoting something. This isn't us. He continues, you show up 100 deep in every rural area in a 50-mile radius, intent on revolution. You'll crash their system and make them pay. And if you all think I'm kidding, I'm dead serious. This is caused by backwards ass rural conservatives operating out of Christianized worldview. Even if they're not Christian, they're heavily influenced by it. They were the ones who voted for Trump in 2016. Those disillusioned redneck / white trash / blue collar, to quote a country song types, who flip massively for the GOP, punish them, punish their towns. They say, BLM burn the cities to the ground. I say, let them see firsthand what it's like when a community is truly burned to the ground. They want a civil war. They should be careful what they've asked for and voted for. I'm not the organisational type, this is what they all say, but maybe someone who can organise it should. Start in certain states in the Midwest, often called the South's middle finger to America. It's literally what the South would have looked like if it wasn't reconstructed. So yeah.
I mean, look, as people have been saying in the chat, the rural right-wing Americans are armed to the teeth. So good luck with that one, guys.
Yeah, like they don't have many cops because they don't generally need them.
Yes, exactly. And the cops they do have, I'm not going to stand there and let you be assholes. They're still going to do their jobs. So yeah, I think that. I mean, maybe they should do that. I don't think it will go well for them. I really don't think it will go very well for them.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone's heard. Apparently, so the Pentagon has allowed military bases to be used as abortion centers now. So,
oh my, you're kidding.
No, it's actually like the defense secretary, is it in America? Defense minister? I don't know. It has basically said, military bases, hospitals can now be used as abortion centers.
Yeah,
in red states.
But do they just mean for the military, which they've done for some time now, sadly? But do they just mean for the military, or do they mean for civilians?
Judging by what I've heard, judging by the way it's been framed to my eyes, it seems like in general, as opposed to just the military.
Well, I don't know. I don't think any of us, unless anyone has got more info on that, I don't think any three of us, because we're all Brits. I can say much about that. We'd need to speak to someone from the US about that one. And no one who's from the US on my Discord wanted to come on this stream. So,
okay.
By the way, if someone from the Discord who is from the US wants to come on the stream, let me know and I'll send you the link. But that would be very disappointing if that's what's happening, although not all that surprising, given the emphasis that the American military is putting on LGBTQ and feminism and all the rest of it these days.
Yeah, I just put the article in the private chat if you want to have a look at it. It was what I was referencing. Yeah,
no, I'll believe you, but I just think it's a bit outside of what any of us can speak about usefully at the moment, to be honest.
I mean, rather say something like the idea that the military is now going to be used as a proxy for progressive politics, even when, I mean, to be fair, I've heard with the US military, I don't want to say stuff I'm not really qualified to say, but I've heard rumors that a lot of the younger recruits in it are in it just for free college, not particularly because they want to be in the army or anything like that. So,
I would just say we've got Darth Killoon in the chat who's saying I'm in the US Army and it's only for military and military dependents. So in other words, like either people who are actually in the military or wives of guys who are serving in the military.
So, kind of like I suppose how tech companies are shipping people out of state to get abortions now.
Yeah.
Or saying they will.
Well, I mean, given the Democrats are in charge of America at the moment, and like the absolutely gaga Biden, it wouldn't really surprise me if the US Army said, "Oh no, or if you're in the military or you're a military wife, we'll give you an abortion." That wouldn't surprise me at all. So that may well be true. And what Darth Killoon is saying, the only way to get on a military base is with a security clearance and a common access card, veteran card, or dependent card. So that would make some sense also. You know, given that the US military, like most Western militaries, has had a fair amount of terrorism and all that kind of thing going around bases. So, yeah. So I don't know. Like I said, I think that if we were going to speak about that, we'd need an American to speak with us about it. Because otherwise we're going to be talking out of our rear end, or at least we're going to be in danger of doing that. So, yeah. All right. So, I mean, Joe Owens, just to finish up on this, because, like, it's a British subject, and I think, in general, I agreed with it. I think it should give people hope what happened in France with Marine Le Pen.
Yeah, it should. I mean, populism's still got a role. Maybe we will vote our way to victory. Maybe, we don't really know. But at the very least, it's still a good. I mean, like a lot of people talk about like parallelism on the right. The Distributors talks about this. Lots of people do. Like what I've heard it said before, and I do actually agree with this, that Israel is probably the greatest example of a parallel community, because it operates outside of what most of the US empire has to live with. It
Yep.
does. It gets to say and do things that go contrary to what other colonies get to say and do. And
Yeah,
not
it's kind
a
of
colony,
it's kind
it's
of
a
an
big
ethno
difference,
state.
but
It's kind of an ethno state.
yeah, and of course, part of the reason why it does this is because it has politicians within the US system that stand up for it. And indeed, even if you wanted to remove yourself from the system and go full parallel society, you still you need people in this political system that are standing up for your interests.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that at all. I think that when you say, look, we might be aware of this system, the one thing that gives me a little bit of hope is that we are going. Well, I mean, all right, there's two ways to take this. Gives me a bit of hope, but we're going to go through some hard times first. I think we're going to go through some very, very hard times over the next 2-3 years, at least.
Yeah.
Everyone can see the cost of living rising before their eyes. I mean, energy in particular, including petrol, what the Americans call gas, but also our own electricity and gas prices for heating and cooking, and also just everyday food items are going up every damn time you go to the supermarket, certainly where I live. The nations themselves, all of the Western nations themselves, are in enormous public debt. And there's also very high levels of private debt. The system we're in may well break down, or largely break down. I'm not talking about an apocalypse or World War Z or anything like that. I'm talking about the actual financial system, and the ability of average ordinary people to actually get by may well, to a large degree, break down over the next few years. And that is very liable to change people's voting patterns. Because once people can't heat their homes or eat properly or both, or afford the petrol to get to work and all this kind of stuff, that stuff is actually going to bite at the most stupid normie.
Yeah, I mean, we might have to sort of pivot our messaging at that point, because
I
mean, on the right, we talk a lot about immigration, which is rightfully so, but what's behind the immigration? It's more expensive housing, it's more demand, it's and of course behind all of that is a rent-seeking class, which is essentially all our establishments being set up to be.
And of course, as you know, Adam, I mean, mass immigration inevitably drives up housing costs, be it mortgages or rent, and at the same time drives down wages, especially for the less skilled. And I think, with a cost of living problem and all the rest of it, well, we should bring that out. And the other thing that's going to happen is services and stuff are going to start breaking down. I mean, arguably the NHS has been breaking down for quite a long time now. And, the left come out with this crap, we need immigrants for the NHS. Well, if you didn't have 1 million immigrants coming into UK over the last year, you wouldn't need as many NHS people, would you? Commonsensically.
And of course, the NHS is just, I mean, that's kind of a problem with the third positionist stuff, which is a different topic altogether. But, all these government departments end up just becoming nodes for more government power being projected and then reflected back in. So, under Tony Blair, they tripled the NHS budget, but you didn't see a tripling of the quality of frontline services.
No,
it was a lot of huge levels of bureaucracy.
Yeah, and making sure there's representation of LGBTQ and feminists and immigrants and all the rest of it, which has nothing to do with giving average British people healthcare, obviously. So yeah, I just think that I'm hopeful that could cause a change in people's voting patterns. It might cause, in Britain, for example, a Labour government first, but Labour would just make everything worse. So it's because more quickly, make everything worse more quickly, I should say, because you can't say that the inverted commas so-called Conservative Party is actually not making things worse. They are. Labour will probably just do it quicker. So I'm still hopeful that we could possibly vote our way out of this.
Yeah.
If people can break away from the two major parties, and obviously the Lib Dems and the Watermelon Greens, who are basically the same, if you can get people actually starting to vote for other populist parties, and if those bloody silly little parties could actually come to some sort of loose agreement not to run against each other in a general election, I still think we could do something under this so-called democratic system, which is not really democratic at all. But I'm not saying we can, but I don't think we should give up hope.
Well, John in chat said, if you wanted more people in your country, you should encourage more people to have children and maintain the traditional family male breadwinner model. Well, during the lockdown, I was out of work for a bit and I got a bit bored. I was looking back for a history of all cabinets, and I found that the average cabinet over the last 100 years doesn't last. I think the average it lasted about 7 years. So of course, no cabinet will actually vote in. Will actually vote for policies that are long term, like having kids, because if you incentivize families and having kids, you're talking sort of 20 years before you have extra workers off of the back of that. As immigration is an immediate thing, So with our current system, and this is the reason why, as much as I don't want to say it, it kind of just seems like democracy is just a doomed experiment that probably never should have been created, is that you end up with this situation where the parliament can't actually incentivize having kids or having a family, because what that's doing is it's leaving money on the table for their opposition that comes in after them.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Any final thoughts on this one, Mitch?
I would just say, I can imagine with global homo, it's going to, perhaps I'm being a bit too black-pilled with this, but I reckon the only way that global homo is going to fall is in a similar way to how communism fell in the East, which was you'd have to get like the main power in it, in our case, the Americans, to be weaker over time to the point where they can't even enforce global homo on say the likes of us.
That's happening anyway, you could say, I would say.
Yeah, sure. It's just a matter of how long have you got till America is so weakened that they couldn't bomb countries to accept gay pride parades or whatever. It could be 10 years from now, it could be 20 years from now. No one really knows. And as for the whole, people voting outside the two-party system, I remember back when Brexit was still a big thing back in 2019, 2018 sort of time, and had loads of commentators saying if Brexit continues any further, people are going to vote towards, far right parties, as the establishment will call them, etc. But then people voted for Tories in 2019.
Well, they did it. The Conservatives and Alexander Johnson did it con. Let's be honest.
Yeah, sure, but people bemoan, let's say people around where I live, people will bemoan both parties for being hopelessly corrupt and just overall being useless. But when it comes to election time, who do they vote for? It's not the English Democrats or UKIP or any of those parties anymore. It's just Labour.
I see what you're saying, and Rob Biscuit in the chat is saying the same thing. They won't allow it. As soon as any threat, they will close down the third party. That to me is this black-pilled stuff, which means okay, let's do nothing then.
Well, hang on though. I will also add to what Royal Biscuits has said. I probably should have mentioned it earlier, but I forgot. You know Lawrence Fox, Milk Toast.
Fox. I know Lawrence Fox.
He had his party's bank account closed down.
Well, jeez. What was the excuse for that?
I'm not sure of the specifics. I just know that he had it closed down, and he was complaining about it.
I take it was from an LGBTQ supporting bank rather than anything else.
I don't know what bank it was. It might have been Lloyd's. It's all.
A lot of banks are very, very woke these days.
Yeah.
Here as well as in the UK. But yeah, I think what you've got to do is you've got to walk the line somewhere between being realistic and realizing that none of the major parties are on our side, certainly not the so-called conservatives. And at the same time, realizing that the idea that we should just walk away from politics will not help us. Walking away from politics won't help us at all. And people have mentioned that Bruce was streaming again earlier today, and I didn't have time to watch much of it. But the one thing I did agree with him on is that the major parties probably want people like us to walk away from politics. It would suit them if we do. If we said, no, we're not going to talk about politics here anymore. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about setting up a homestead somewhere. Now, I'm not saying that talking about setting up a homestead somewhere is not a good thing to do. And were I qualified to do it, I might even do it. And I have nothing against talking to people who want to talk about that stuff. But I don't think we can afford, especially not in countries like the UK, to actually walk away from politics. Because if we do, within 10, 15 years, we'll be a minority in our own country.
They won't leave you alone even if you walk away from it, to be honest.
Yeah, they won't leave you alone. Exactly. Not in the UK, they won't. I mean, in America, you might get away with it just because the place is so bloody big. But you won't in the UK. So I don't think we can walk away from politics. And I don't care if people criticize me and turn around and say, oh, no, we can't talk about politics because we just got to walk away from it. I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. And Don the Pleb, I know, in America says much the same thing. And Don the Pleb is an American guy who I like and who I've streamed with and who's in my Discord. And I think that we can't afford to walk away from politics. And when we do get a win, as the Americans got with Roe v. Wade and as they got with the pro-gun decision from the Supreme Court, fine. Take your wins when you can get them.
Although, to be fair, I don't think Royal Biscuits is arguing to walk away. That's not his style.
All right, fair enough. Well, if he's not, then that's okay. And I just misunderstood what he said there. But I do think that we can't just support the Conservative Party. That's what I'm trying to get at. Is we can't do that. It won't work because much of the Conservative Party is absolutely false, including the Prime Minister. Although maybe the Prime Minister won't be there that much longer, because I see even what was his Michael Howard's even called for him to resign now.
Yeah, well, they did that vote of no confidence too early, didn't they?
Yeah, but then they did that to Theresa May, and it still didn't keep her in very long, did it?
No, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like
they did almost the same.
Even if you win.
Yeah, if you win, but you don't win by much, which is what happened to Theresa May. And actually, Johnson won by an even smaller margin than Theresa May did. So I just think the writing's on the wall for Johnson unless he can pull something out of the bag. And like pretending to be the Prime Minister of Ukraine ain't going to work for him.
I just don't even know. I kind of think I do know, but why he's decided to go down this road. I mean, he literally came in with this enormous mandate. He could have done everything, and instead...
hasn't done anything that's good whatsoever.
I mean, he hasn't even I mean, I knew from day one because he'd done that debate with Mary Beard and he's got like a track record. You know where he's going to go. He didn't even go down there. He literally just sort of looked across at Corbyn and was like, oh, I see. I'm sorry you lost. I'll pick up the ball for you.
Yeah, I don't know, man. What do you think, Mitch?
I mean, I've heard rumours that Dominic Cummings wanted to achieve a lot more when he was with Boris, but COVID kind of threw a spanner in the works on that one. I mean, I can imagine like some of the stuff that Boris used to talk about in terms of the election campaign. Dominic Cummings was looking at pressure on it, but then COVID happened, so perhaps that's what happened. Perhaps
I still think he sold us out. Johnson sold us out over Brexit, to be honest.
Yeah,
it's a half Brexit that we managed to get in the end at best, really. Yeah, I mean, it's much better than nothing. I am glad Britain is out of the EU. Don't get me wrong, but we're not as out as I'd like us to be. I'd like us to be out of most European things.
like the ECHR who can legislate to us about how we should be treating migrants.
The European Defence Agreement, all of that stuff, Britain should be out of.
Agreed.
I mean, I'm not against Britain saying, okay, in this particular instance, we'll do an exercise with the Danes or the French or the Dutch or whoever it might be. I'm not against that. But being in a general European Defence Agreement, Britain should just walk away from that. And as you rightly say, the European Court of Human Rights should absolutely be chucked out.
Yeah. I mean, they've even folded back on that now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I do it. Boris, sorry, Alexander, I hate calling him Boris because Boris is not his real name. That's a made-up stage name. Like most of his
yeah, but see, I don't actually like Alexander because it sounds too English.
Well, yeah, it's not really. It's more Greek, I think.
Yeah, it's Greek, but it's just it's something you'd expect to hear in an English classroom, as Boris signals him as being, the sort of half Turk, half, foreign monstrosity that he is.
Yeah. I mean, look, he's absolutely cut to his wife. Like I'm quite convinced that a lot of the social policy that Alexander Johnson does comes from his missus.
Yeah.
Particularly when he came out with that statement about Roe v. Wade. I've always believed in the right of women to choose. In other words, I've always believed in the right of women to murder their babies. But of course, he didn't say it that way. But that's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, the BBC called it a constitutional right earlier.
What, to murder your baby?
Biden did as well in his speech. He did like a 30-minute interval where he pretty much in all but words pretty much advocated for massive, should we say, protests against the Supreme Court and to call them unconstitutional. So I think it's just at this point, it's like America's so polarized. I can just imagine the way it's going is going to be like civil war. The way even Biden goes against the Supreme Court of all things, which last sergeant is about illegal.
But don't forget Biden. He's basically told what to say and sometimes remembers what it should be.
Where to sit as well.
Yeah, I think so. And he certainly can't ride a bike.
There was a thing. There was a news story where he held up his little cheat sheet. And they sort of had a photograph on it, and it had all his instructions, and it's like, you sit in your seat after this happens, and you do this, and you read that, and it's very direct. They don't leave anything to chance, not with him.
Yeah, I saw somebody said when he fell off the bike, you saw the video of him falling off that bike after he'd stopped. Apparently, someone said, he saw some little girl and wanted to go smell her hair. Dear, so funny. John Commonus in the chat says Boris is a clown. This guy should be president of the Ukraine with how much he's pushing for the war. Mate, I've been calling Alexander Johnson the Prime Minister of Ukraine for a while now. Because he sure cares about Ukraine more than he does Great Britain. That's for a fact. So yeah, all right, guys. So what's our final verdict on the Joe Owens thing? I reckon we should take Marine Le Pen's success in France as things are not yet hopeless.
I think populism still got some road ahead of it. Some stuff left to do.
It's got some mileage, yes. Yeah. And I also agree with you that if he chose to do it, and my question is, will he choose to do it? Farage could actually still do quite a lot of good in Britain if he chose to actually do it, and I don't know if he will.
Well, I mean, Farage has done the smart thing of actually staying within the political circle, being active, being out there. He's on. He's got his own little shows. He's got a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
He can switch that energy in any direction he needs it to at any time, and those people will go with him. He could start a new party tomorrow if he wanted to, and it would shoot up to probably be the sort of fourth or fifth biggest party in the country.
I think if he put himself out, he could get himself elected as an MP.
You think so?
Yeah, I do. If he chose the right place,
Hmm.
put a lot of got enough financial backing, which he could get.
Yeah.
I reckon he actually could make himself an MP, and I wish he would.
I mean, the funny thing about his South Thanet election, because they always like to bring it up, and they go, "Oh, we couldn't win in South Thanet." I mean, first off, South Thanet is not as right wing as people like to think. There's quite a few areas around there that are quite shit livy. And then on top of that as well, he basically made those two parties just trip over themselves and massively overspend on what they usually would, just to make sure he didn't win there. And he was doing like bugger all.
Yeah, I reckon if he chose the right place with enough financial backing, and I think he could get that. I do think he could put himself into the House of Commons, but it's whether he chooses to or not.
Anyway, I'm going to pop out for like 3 minutes, 2-3 minutes.
Yeah, no worries, because I'm going to ask Mitch for his subject anyway.
All right.
But yeah, I'd just say last thing with Farage is, sorry, not Farage, with Joe Owens' thing is, look, we are going to go through a very rough time over the next few years. And this could change people's voting patterns. It could change them more drastically than many people think. And it could change them a lot quicker than many people think as well. There's nothing like people not being able to feed their family or heat their home in the winter to very quickly changing people's priorities. So don't give up hope, guys, because I don't think we should. Not yet. Now, Mitch, what was your first subject for this evening, mate?
Got a range of talking about Polish Pride Parade, the war in Ukraine, and we've all talked about Roe v. Wade. So I think.
Well, we will talk about Roe v. Wade a bit more in a minute, but go with the Polish Pride Parade first.
Yeah, I'm just mainly focusing on the fact that. So a lot of the people there have been like holding up placards saying, bring back the Azov battalion and all this. And I was sat there thinking, it's rather telling that.
Sorry, who wanted to bring back the Azov battalion?
LGBT pride. Like people at the actual.
Well, look, I suppose you could argue that, back in the mid-20th century, there were quite a lot of gay guys involved with the German National Socialist Workers' Party. But,
Yeah, I just find that rather telling idea because I'm thinking, like, you get a lot of people who hype them up as like being like full-on Wignats sort of people, but then their most ardent supporters happen to be Polish Pride Parade, which is all the same. What I also found funny about that was about
Hugo Boss uniforms, mate. I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
Sorry, so I didn't mean to derail your train of thought, mate. Karen.
I was just trying to think of a joke about that for a second. I couldn't think of anything. Yeah, I was also going to say so another like funny thing about that Pride Parade is also so you get like these like, have you seen that blue, white, blue tricolour that the Russian shitlibs have been doing?
Yeah, the tiny number of anti-Russian Russians, yes.
Yeah, they tried to get into the Pride Parade over in Warsaw, and they got rejected because Poles hate Russians and whatnot. So I just found it ironic that like these Russians who spend their time getting brownie points with the West by hating on their own country get barred by a bunch of like I want to say by a bunch of gays who celebrate like bloody Azov battalion.
Yeah, it's insane, and I mean, also bear in mind that the Ukrainian nationalists don't much like the Poles.
Yeah, I've seen Polish people complain a lot about like Bandera, like Stepan Bandera supporting Ukrainians who acting very arrogant, anti-Polish.
Didn't those guys kill lots of Poles in 1945? I believe they did.
Yeah, Gilicia-Vohilnia massacres, like entire villages where babies got their heads split open with axes.
Let's be careful, Mitch.
Yeah.
This is YouTube. It's not a free speech platform.
I was just saying, let's just say a lot of brutal stuff went down, but it's not. even like you couldn't show it in a movie because it's that horrid. Put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that went on the Eastern Front by both sides.
Yeah, I mean, the Ukrainians were so brutal. Even the lots of Heinrich Himmler even said to the Ukrainians, "Calm down a bit, lads," which is rather something.
Jesus. Okay.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, look, there is. I don't know. Look, I think Russia had legitimate security concerns about what was going on in Ukraine. The Russians are now clearly winning. I mean, anyone who doesn't realize the Russians are clearly winning is obviously only watching the Western mainstream media. And even some of those idiots are starting to see a twinkling of the light somewhere over the horizon.
yeah.
You know, I reckon the Ukrainian position in the Donbass is about to fall apart totally.
Yeah, so the Russians are the gate of Bakhmut, which is like, so you've got two defensive lines left, which is one centered around Bakhmut, which the Russians are 5 kilometers away from. Then you've got Slovyansk, which again, they're like 15 kilometers, not even away from Slovyansk.
And all the maps I see, Mitch, on all the maps I look at, some of which you put up in the Discord, the Russians are also they're fairly close to cutting off a lot of these lines or getting around behind them.
Yeah, it's so with Slovyansk getting in from the north, I think they'll also try the Seversky Donetsk River. The Russians pretty much control the entire left bank, especially after several Donetsk was evacuated, which I've heard about that evacuation. The Russians found out in the middle of the evacuation, and hundreds of Ukrainians got killed mid evacuation. So
guys, was that video with all the trucks and buses and what have you that the Russians were hitting with artillery and from the air?
Yeah, that was that was like units trying to escape the salient altogether over to Bakhmut, and
their vehicles were knocked out and they all ended up going on foot. The ones who weren't killed.
Yeah, that's basically the position that salient is in right now. Like Lysychansk, there's an oil refinery that straddles next to the main motorway.
Yep.
That is left as the only route of escape. But even if they try to escape, Russians have that place within artillery and anti-tank gun range. So anything moves on that motorway, they're not going to have a happy time, should we say.
Yeah, I know. Look, I don't disagree with you at all. But I mean, going back to your original point about the Polish gay pride parades, the fact we were talking about this before the stream started, and the reason why these Polish gay pride parades are now a big deal is because the EU insisted they are. Is that not right?
Yeah, it's
It was a quid pro quo for money. Yeah.
Yeah, the problem with Poland now is they're really getting galloped by the beast. Like one thing about global harm when it comes to Ukraine is with Eastern Europe is they're very good at using Eastern European fears and hatred of Russians to sneak in with global harm stuff. So you got Warsaw and you got the big cities in Poland, which are pretty much run by NGOs at this point, and they're pretty much very global homophile now. Southeastern Poland looks to be resisting it, but whenever they get blackmailed with having their budget taken away, they're having to fold. So Poland's looking pretty much in 10 years' time, they'll be like the Irish. Poles will be.
Yeah, I mean, look, I remember like big parades in Poland where it was all a mass of red and white Polish flags, and it was all basically white Polish people, and there was loads of religious stuff because the Poles are mostly Catholics, and the many people like in the Bias Brainwashing Corporation, you know, the British BBC, etc., didn't like that stuff at all. But as you're saying, because Poland wants EU money, they have to accept all this EU POS stuff about LGBTQ and all this other rubbish, which I'm sure the vast majority of Poles don't support. But then the vast majority of Brits don't support it, and the vast majority of Americans don't support it either. But it's pushed on us.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Poland is like a Catholic country, but you also got to think, because the beast has been targeting Poland, like Poland just even like 10 years ago compared to now, quite different in terms of religiosity. So that's a bit of
I'd say it was still a lot more religious than the UK is or Australia is.
Yes, certainly. But if you take a look at the younger generation, it is shaping up to be similar to.
Well, they're going to get all the propaganda that our people are spewed out from, everything from all the most modern Hollywood movies to almost all modern TV series to even TV adverts, which are all propaganda of one sort or another, basically.
Yeah, you'll see billboards in like cities like Warsaw and Krakow where there's like interracial like couples. So they really are going tearing on Poland. Ukraine is also apparently LGBT acceptance in Ukraine has risen sixfold apparently in the past 6 years, which is totally not suspicious at all.
No, I know you can always believe all polls, of course. there's a pun.
I mean, the only part
I like puns. I beg your pardon.
Yeah, I feel like the only part of Ukraine that's not been polled in that is like the Donbass, because let's face it, the Donbass is like, I don't know. I mean,
it's majority Russian supporting for a start.
Yeah, it's not just that. I don't know what the Eastern European version of Blue Labour is, but that's basically what Russians are like. They've got a lot of Soviet nostalgia, but then you ask them about their social views, and your average shitlib would call them a Nazi or something.
Yeah,
which is
I kind of like watching the Russian army, and like you'll see if you watch videos of the Russian army, if you can find any, because of course all of the mainstream media won't show you anything. And also, it's even hard to find it on YouTube because there's been so much censorship. But if you can see that, you'll often see like a Russian army column with an Imperial Russian flag with the eagle and all the rest of it. And they'll also have a Red Army flag. But the Red Army flag is kind of a nostalgia for World War II thing.
Yeah, they repurpose the Soviet Union to serve Russian patriotism. So, for example, World War II, Great Patriotic War, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's like, a lot of the Red Army stuff is a bit like what has gone on for years and years in the UK with all the veterans from World War II stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty much it. Because, you got the Imperial stuff, because again, Russia, one thing about Russians is, it's kind of like a horseshoe theory when it comes to Russians. Like, you got Soviet nostalgics and Imperial nostalgics. They both coalesce around making Russia great again. So, they'll support Putin in, say, him going to war on Ukraine because, Russia.
Well, all right. Well, you're a Ukraine expert on this, on the Discord. So, what I would say is this: we have to bear in mind that the war that's been going on in Ukraine over the last few months really started 14 years ago. In 2014. It really started in 2014, and the Ukrainians have been killing Russians in the breakaway republics in the Donbass all that time, and the Russians weren't doing anything back about it.
They sent volunteers, but it's not like they didn't do what they're doing now.
No.
It's not just that. It's what the Donbass. With Lugansk, this doesn't apply, but with Donetsk, they've got fairly dysfunctional politics. So I can imagine the Russians. Let's say in the post, let's say in the inevitability that Russia wins this war, they will try and solve out the issues in Donetsk. Lugansk isn't much of an issue, but with Donetsk, there's a lot of dysfunctionality about it. But yeah, you even had back in 2014 and 2015, you had battles where Donbass coal miners, who only had a few hours training with guns, managed to beat elite Ukrainian Marines and paratroopers.
Yeah.
So it's not like they were struggling too much.
There's also the Ukrainians in Odessa, for example. They burnt a load of Russians alive.
Yeah,
and Russian civilians, they burnt them alive.
Yeah, it's very you have pro-Russian sentiment there, but it's very suppressed. So
I don't know if any of you guys watched the what's his name, Ritter. The American military guy. He's an ex-US Marine bloke.
Yeah,
Scott Ritter. he does extremely long streams on YouTube, and they're very rambling and they repeat themselves, and like they're only worth really listening to for an hour at a time, because otherwise they'll go back to something he's already done. I don't know how he does it. He loops stuff somehow. But I was listening to one of those earlier. I think it was either earlier today or yesterday while I was doing something else. And there was a different dude on there, a different an American, former American soldier on there, on some show, and he never gives you any links to where these shows are. But this guy was saying that there were videos of Ukrainian doctors actually telling people that any Russian POW that came into that place, that hospital, to be treated should be castrated.
Yeah,
which is like this. That is the most insane war crime I've ever heard. Even the fucking Nazis in World War II didn't do that.
Yeah, I've heard of Ukrainians on national television saying stuff like that. So it's not like, because like fair enough, I can understand Ukrainians hating Russians for invading, but then again, does that justify castrating POWs? Nah, I don't blame Russians for doing this in Ukraine when I look at what Ukrainians are doing.
Nothing justifies you doing that. I'm sorry, nothing does. It's like that would have shamed the cruelest tyrant in the ancient world. You know, Attila the Hun wouldn't. That's like Attila the Hun stuff. You know.
Yeah, pretty much.
And yet the Western mainstream media says not a word about that. Not a word. You won't find that anywhere on the Bias Brainwashing Corporation or any of the mainstream American news channels.
Yeah, that's. I don't know where those doctors come from. Judging by the level of hatred, I'm going to guess Western Ukraine, because Western Ukraine's really got a hate boner against Russia. Because what? Because you got Western Ukraine very, very much hate the Russians. They've got a lot of football hooligan types who they'll literally do chants at football stadiums where they're going to say, like, we torture Russian POWs and stuff. So, yeah.
But it's not going to work out well for them, and the Russians have far more POWs than they do.
Well, put it this way, I mean, I'd love to
see... Except so far as I can work out, the Russians are sticking fairly closely to the Geneva Convention in terms of prisons. So, you know.
It's not just that. I mean, I've not heard anything about Russian POWs for like months now. So I'm guessing the Russians off. Like, ever since that video of like those Russian POWs in that dairy factory getting tortured by getting shot in the knees, ever since then, there's just been I've heard nothing of Russian POWs. Aside from that Vladimir Shishimarin guy who got sued for shooting like an elderly guy or whatever. Aside from that,
it's like those guys who were killed. Supposedly, well, they were killed, but they were supposedly killed by the Russians outside Kiev, and they were all neatly spaced along a road. And I'm utterly convinced the Russians didn't do that, because if you are going to shoot a load of, and I've seen people shot like that by SWAPO in Southwest Africa, and they're in a group. They ain't spread neatly along a road, mate. That's not the way people like that do that. And why would the Russians have done that? You know, I mean, there was no purpose. That was the Ukrainians who did that to their own people, and I strongly suspect that they were Ukrainians who had, in some minor way, cooperated with the Russians.
I mean, I've seen pictures of some of those victims having Russian ration packs next to them. So that's what made me skeptical anyway. Yeah. It's just why would Russians kill off people who cooperated with them?
And then leave a rat pack next to them. Yeah, just so people can say, "Oh, look, it's a rat pack." It sounds like a very clumsy propaganda thing to me. And we all know the Ukrainians have been doing that since the war started. And the only people really swallowing it have been the Western MSM.
Yeah. I mean, the most ridiculous story I've heard has to be what is called the Goat of Kiev. Apparently setting off a bunch of booby traps that killed 40 Russian soldiers today.
Yeah, I don't know. Adam, are you back, mate?
Yeah, I'm here.
Have you got anything? Have you got anything to add to this stuff we're talking about?
No, I've kind of been on radio silence for the whole Ukraine thing.
I don't know. I look, as far as I can see, the Russians are behaving relatively honourably. I mean, I know they've got a couple of British mercenaries, although apparently the Russians haven't got them. The Donbass breakaway republics have, and they're saying they're going to execute them, or they might execute them. I suspect they won't, because that would be bad publicity for the Russians, and like killing 2 British mercs ain't going to gain them much. I think they're probably more likely to swap them for some Russians who have been taken prisoner. Like, I noticed Ukraine convicted some Russians of war crimes and like are going to execute them supposedly, and the war crimes they were convicted of were very dubious. So we'll see what happens there. Russia, to me, is on the verge of winning. As someone said in the chat earlier, they were always going to win once the war started. To be honest, I mean, Ukraine was never going to win. But I was talking to Mitch before this stream started about an article that RUSI put out, the Royal United Services Institute in the UK. Which looked at the ammunition expenditure in the war in Ukraine, and the amount of ammunition, particularly artillery ammunition, but all ammunition, that the Russians are expending is enormous. And America, and this RUSI article looked at the American ammunition production, including like big shells, missiles, all this kind of shit. They looked at it, and America simply couldn't do that. That they don't have the industrial facilities to produce that amount of ammunition. And given that countries like Britain and America have given away half their war stocks, and Germany and several other European countries have given away half their war stocks of a lot of anti-tank ammunition, etc., to Ukraine, much of which has been wasted or sold on the black market, because Ukraine's the most corrupt nation in Europe by a long way. The idea that we could even think about fighting a war with Russia is pretty fucking stupid, excuse my language. But I mean, we're also thinking that we may end up fighting a war with China, and China's actually got bigger industry than Russia has. So, I mean,
T in chat says, what do you guys think of the Lithuania Kaliningrad situation? I mean, that's a bit of a clusterfuck, but am I right in thinking that Lithuania's now walked that back?
I haven't seen that. Carry on, Mitch. You're more of an expert on this, mate.
So the EU Commission were willing to do a deal with the Russians over it, but then Lithuania pretty much said, "No, we're doubling down. We're not going to let Russians go for our land." So I don't know what's happening in terms of Russian reprisals, because they still haven't come out with any. But, I mean, given it's been the past few days, I can imagine they've got quite a few retaliatory measures on their mind. It'll probably be to do with gas. It won't be like this is a massive escalation, because I mean, Kaliningrad is supplied through land via Lithuania because it's cut off from the rest of Russia. So that is pretty much like a big middle finger towards Russia. But I don't think it's going to be like nuclear war. I think it's just going to be Lithuania has a gas supply cut, or I don't know.
Well, just to explain to people in the chat who don't know, Kaliningrad is a Russian enclave within the Baltic states. But when the Baltic states were given independence by Russia under Boris Yeltsin, there were loads of treaties signed which gave Russia this enclave. And all these treaties have been broken over this, by the way. And the Russians are not going to surrender this bloody place. If anyone wanted to take it over, that's World War III, mate.
Yeah, that's the thing is, because you got Kaliningrad, which is pretty much like an unsinkable aircraft carrier because it's very important towards Russian defense plans. So if you can't supply the place, if you can't supply the military units got stationed there, it's a big red flag for Russia. And anyone who knows what Russians are like knows that when you try to screw them, they're not the kind to just give up easily. Like they will.
I know the furthest north NATO troops in the Baltics are just under 1,000 British troops. And like, let's have a look at this war in Ukraine with like, how many shells a day are the Russians using, Mitch?
Something like 50 to 70,000 a day.
A day, right? Now that is far more shells than the British Army fired in Afghanistan in like almost 20 years. Almost 20 years. They're using that in a day. These under 1,000 British troops in the Baltics, who are the furthest north of any of the NATO troops in the Baltics, all they could do is die gallantly. They would not stand an earthly chance. And at the rate of casualties that Ukraine is taking at the moment, the entire British Army, and that not just all the frontline tea farms, but like all the support people, all the far too many women in it, and all the rest of it, would all be dead in about, I don't know, 4 months at most. Every single one of them would be dead, wounded, or captured in 4 months at most.
I mean, it's what? I've heard it's something like 1,000 casualties a day, I believe, for Ukrainian soldiers.
It's somewhat, well, the Ukrainians are saying, I think the Ukrainians said they're losing 10,000 guys a fortnight, which is killed, wounded, and captured. And the entire British Army, as I said, including all the support people, including all the women, far too many women that are in it, is 80,000 people. You can work that out. If you lose 10,000 a fortnight, you've got an 80,000 man army. That's how long the British Army would last in a major European war.
Jobu said a little bit further up. Have you guys already talked about Roe v. Wade?
No, but we're going to. And
we brushed on it at the beginning.
Yeah, no, we are going to finish up with Roe v. Wade. But if someone else, if you want to come on, Jobu, you can. But you'll have to let me know in the Discord, mate, or on here, and then I'll send you a link. But yeah, we will finish up on Roe v. Wade because I want to talk a little bit more about the Prime Minister of Ukraine, Alexander Johnson. So hang on, let me go and send Jobu a link. Guys, carry on talking.
So yeah, George in chat said 500 casualties a day, 140 days, slightly less than 5 months. It's pretty bleak.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you think the British Army is better than the Ukrainian Army, and I would,
which I do.
Yeah, I'd subscribe to that view for sure. But you're only going to gain a month at most by that, at most. And it takes a bare minimum of 4 months to train a soldier. I mean, right, you might get away with like a basic guy in about 3 months, but it's certainly no less than that. I mean, the British, Alexander Johnson has said Britain will train 10,000 Ukrainian soldiers every, 90 days or something like that. But they're losing more than that in a fortnight. So it ain't going to do them any good, you know? You don't need to be... You don't need to be able to do rocket science for that one, do you?
Especially when you've got, I mean, I put a link in the chat where it says like, what is it, like a Ukrainian Marine unit lost like 80% of its trained members and had to be replaced by recruits. So...
Yeah, look, I've got to talk about this one. Hi, Joe. I've got to talk about this one. Cardamom, but General Sir Patrick Sanders of the British Army said we must. Can you mute yourself, please, Joe?
Sorry, mate.
You have too many magpies in the background, mate. But General Sir Patrick Sanders of the British Army said we must be prepared to fight in Europe again. What he actually said is we must be prepared to train young Britons to fight in World War III. He's even more insane than Cardamom's thing makes him sound. I'm sorry, young Britons in World War III in Europe? Did we not learn anything over the last 100 years?
No. Royal Biscuit said underneath, Duke, is that assuming that the people want to fight and are in a fit state to fight?
Well, I mean, he's obviously talking about the people joining the British Army, but I mean, you know, whilst it's not quite as bad as the Americans, it's almost as bad as the Americans in terms of its feminization and LGBTQ stuff. I mean, someone in the Discord earlier today put up a video from the Royal Navy about how LGBTQ is so great. I mean, and I have to say, if I was the Royal Navy, that's about the last thing I'd be putting up if I wanted people who were young men to join the Royal Navy. But, you know, and my son's serving in the Royal Navy, by the way. So, you know, I'm interested in this.
I saw some stats a while ago where they looked at a bunch of countries and said, were they, how likely were people to fight for their country if it was invaded? And even for Britain, which was actually one of the higher ones in the West, I think it was only about 43% or sort of 40 to 45%.
Yeah, and I bet 95% of those people were Anglo-Celts rather than
but they're also probably old too.
Yeah, I mean, I would have said I was prepared to fight for Britain until recently, and the only reason I wouldn't be now is because I'm too bloody old. But I'm not prepared to fight for Alexander Johnson and Globo Homo. I'm not. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm coming very close to telling my son that the Navy ain't a good career. I'm coming close to it, I must say. Like he's got a dream of commanding a Fleet Air Arm Squadron and commanding a warship, and I'm reluctant to tell him not to do that. But you know, because if he did either of those things, his grandfather and great grandfather and great great grandfather and myself would be enormously proud of him on a personal level. But I'm sick to death of seeing Royal Navy warships going to sea with no surface-to-surface missile, which means if they fought a serious near-peer enemy, they would get sunk because they have no way of sinking them.
Mm.
You know, a modern warship that doesn't have a surface-to-surface missile to fire at other surface warships is just going to get sunk before it gets within gun range.
Someone messaged me and said that the waist size of citizens would rather hamper training.
Well, it already does. It already does. But what even more hampers training is that they allow women in now, which means that the fitness standards are not very high anyway, because women can't pass higher fitness standards.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard I think it was earlier or yesterday where China pretty much said to, I think it was like the French ambassador, that they will do any means necessary, including militarily, to take back Taiwan. So that's really upgrading their rhetoric on that. So I can imagine, let's say, not far down the line, you're going to see Chinese play for Taiwan.
Well, I mean, look, would I want to see a Royal Navy warship going up against the Chinese Navy with no surface-to-surface missile, which means they're just going to die?
Yeah, it's just.
I mean, because a surface warship today without an over-the-horizon surface-to-surface missile is going to die against any decent navy. You can fight people like Nigeria or you know, like crappy, shitty furball countries. Sure, you can, but if you can't go up against a near-peer enemy like the Chinese or the Russians. Not that I think the Russians have any interest in fighting Britain whatsoever. But you can't go up against a near-peer enemy like Chinese without an over-the-horizon surface-to-surface missile. And Alexander Johnson is far more interested in giving away most British missiles to the Ukrainians than he is properly arming the Royal Navy, let alone building enough warships.
Yeah, pretty much. It's just. I mean, what is going to take us years and years to get back the stockpiles we've wasted on Ukraine?
A British general said recently that just the ammunition we have given away to Ukraine will take years to replace because our industrial base is so tiny now.
Yeah, I can believe that. Hang on, so we went from not extolling black pills on populism and elections to extolling black pills on World War III.
No, look, I'm against World War III, mate. Don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah, we all are. But that's kind of the issue.
Yeah, no, I'm absolutely against World War III, and look, I'm also against absolutely like shoving the Russians into the arms of the Chinese Communist Party, which is exactly what the West has done. It's the biggest strategic error in the history of the world, in my opinion.
There could be no black pilling today, boys.
No.
No. You can come up with your stuff on Roe v. Wade in a minute, mate. But yeah, pushing Russia, which wasn't the British enemy, hasn't ever really much been a British enemy, except when Britain was a big Central Asian power. Because Britain's a whale, or should be, if we had a decent navy, and Russia is an elephant, a land power. Pushing Russia into the arms of China is the biggest strategic error that has ever happened in the world, and it's been pushed by Biden and the various neocons in the Democratic Party and also in some of the Republican Party in America, and by morons like Alexander Johnson, the Prime Minister of Ukraine. I mean, Liz Truss, right? And I mean, you should definitely take military advice from Liz Truss, was actually telling British people to go and fight in Ukraine.
Yeah, the Metro, the London newspaper, actually was telling people how they could do it. Like, literally had a headline story saying...
And Liz Truss was sitting there, the British Foreign Secretary, saying, oh, yeah, you go and fight for Ukraine. What a stupid, silly bitch. Honestly.
Yeah, this is the same woman that fought Voronezh and Rostov-on-Don in Ukraine. So
yeah, she was a female struggling with geography.
Yeah, you can imagine like Sergei Lavrov's face when he actually saw that he was working with someone who doesn't even know Russian and Ukrainian geography.
That's just crazy, man. It's just crazy.
That coincided with the photo that she put out where she was riding a tank with a fucking fairy hat on, wasn't it?
Oh my god! Yeah, riding an old-fashioned British tank that has no self-defense system. That has no self-defense system on it, like no active defense system on it against anti-tank guided weapons. And with a rifle gun still, which is going to be replaced, but it's still going to take several years, with a smoothbore gun, which allows you to have a much bigger penetrator. And in terms of tank guns, size really does matter. But, you know. George in the chat, die for Ukraine, be on a Facebook post that gets 10 likes and be forgotten forever. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Why would you fight for Ukraine? The most corrupt country in Europe, according to the United Nations, which is like Global Homo Central, it was one of the centers for the sex trade, like young girls being sent around the world to be kept as prostitutes who couldn't even leave. It was
it's also got the biggest, I think, one of the biggest markets for babies.
Yeah, it was the center of the babies for cash trade. You know, if you were someone who, like a gay couple who wanted to get a baby, Ukraine was where you went. Not, you know. I'm sorry. It's and on top of that, of course, there's already been. Apparently, you can go on the dark web. You know, like what was it called? I used to have the browser. I don't have it anymore. You can go on one where people used to buy drugs and all that stuff. You can go on the dark web and you can already buy Stinger anti-aircraft missiles and NLAW anti-tank missiles on the black market. And you telling me terrorists aren't already doing that? Because of course they are.
Yeah, it's like those two French Caesar SPGs that the Russians got. That they never so much have a scratch on them. And you can imagine they were sold to the Russians, not captured in battle.
Yep. And the Russians are reverse engineering them. And of course, all of the Western weapons that have been sent to Ukraine, they've all been captured. Examples of them have all been captured by the Russians. And all of those are going to get reverse engineered. And in due course, not only the Russians, but also probably the Chinese, because we pushed Russia into being big buddies with China, are going to get those things and know exactly how they work and how to jam them and all the rest of it. It's an insane policy. And it ain't going to win.
I'm reminded about that old joke about French military surplus rifles. Never been fired and only dropped once.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. They used to be French, but not so much these days. But because the French have actually been a bit more sensible than some people about it. Like the French generals have actually complained about those French Caesar self-propelled guns being sent to Ukraine. And have said, we told you not to do that. So, and the French generals are a bit more outspoken than British ones are. Because they have a more political attitude,
Mm.
Look, people are saying in the chat, and this stream is called Splendid Isolation because of the era of Lord Salisbury. Craig 55, Britannia should rule the race but stay out of European quarrels. Said Salisbury, we are fish. Absolutely right. Absolutely correct. And as Craig also says, sadly, common sense died with Lord Salisbury. Look, I would argue Lord Salisbury, who was Prime Minister until 1902, I think, was the last real Conservative Prime Minister. I mean, you could make an argument for Stanley Baldwin, but nobody after that, really, to be honest. Yeah, John Commonos, the Tor Bowser was the one you were talking about. I was talking about. I beg your pardon. Yeah, it was. All right. Unless you've got anything to add to that, Mitch or Adam.
Nah, can't think of anything.
Lord Salisbury either said we are fish or we are whales. It might have been whales. You know what he was talking about. We're a seagoing people because, after all, we are an island who depends on world trade. But there we go. But the Royal Navy. We just recently had the 40th anniversary of the Falklands War, and in the Falklands War in 1982, the Royal Navy had 70 destroyers and frigates. We now have 17. 17. And are they better ships? Mostly, but they still only be in one place at one time. So, there we go. So anything else to say on that, guys? Or we'll move on to our last thing, which is going to be Roe v. Wade and the Prime Minister of Ukraine, or rather his wife's reaction to it.
Nah, nothing from me.
Anything, Mitch?
Nah, can't think of anything.
All right.
Yeah, let's talk about why these hoes are all mad.
Yeah, hoes be mad is what this section's going to be called now. Hoes be mad by Roe v. Wade. Look, first of all, let's be clear what Roe v. Wade actually does. Actually, before we do, let me just say this. Ukraine supposedly supports Argentina's claim to the Falkland Islands. That would never fucking surprise me, guy. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Anyway, let's move on. Roe v. Wade. What does it really mean? All Roe v. Wade does is put the
it just returns the states' rights.
It gives states the right to decide what their policy on abortion is, and even the most right-wing states in America, even the places like Texas, etc. If you are a woman whose life's going to be put in danger by having your baby, or if you are the victim of a real rape, or in many cases incest, you will still be allowed to get an abortion. All right, so it's not going to stop any woman in danger of her life. Even the most right-wing states will have exceptions for stuff like that. All it will do is stop any chick going to an abortion clinic and saying, "I want to kill my baby." That's all it's going to do. In right-wing states, it's going to do nothing in left-wing states. So if you're in New York, or you're in San Francisco, or Los Angeles, or any of these vile left-wing cities in America, you can still go and get abortion on demand, probably up until at least the day they're going to be born.
Yeah, but
at a technical level, that's correct. Yeah. Sorry, Adam, go ahead, mate.
I was just going to say it still massively reduces the number of abortions that are going to happen.
It's a totally good thing, Adam. Yes.
Yeah, people talk about going over the border, like crossing it. That will happen, but not anywhere near as much as I think people like to think it will.
Well, there's a number of US corporations that have offices in red states have come out and said that they'll pay for an employee to travel to a blue state for an abortion. The reason they're doing that, of course, is paying for their abortion is a hell of a lot cheaper than paying for either maternity leave or losing that woman from the workplace while she raises a family and having to train replacements.
Yeah.
100%.
So that's still fucking vile. But, technicalities aside, like we should recognise that this is probably the biggest social victory that we've had in the right wing, probably in my lifetime. And the ripple effects are so large that they've even lured Brutus into the chat. So I think we should all celebrate.
I haven't had the time to watch Brutus's stream, although I did see he was doing a stream. But as far as I saw, it was mostly about China virus. And most of us guys got bored with talking about the China virus over the last 18 months. But, there we go.
I mean,
And
another good thing for about Roe v. Wade is it will will have a lot of momentum built into it. People will be able to propel off of this and gain power over other issues in a minor way, but still.
I mean, let's also remember the U.S. Supreme Court at the same time, or just before, did also pass a gun rights. What's the word? They made a decision on gun rights, which actually was in favor of people being able to carry guns in America. So there were two victories, not one.
Well, what's important about the Roe versus Wade decision is it's the first time that one of these left-wing social initiatives has actually been rolled back, and they can't fucking stand it, mate. I was stuck helping to make move all day yesterday, and I'm about to drop off for round 2. But last night when I got home, I just spent an hour scrolling through Twitter and various streams and whatnot. And the thing is that the left know what this decision means. And that's why they're panicking.
Well, they don't like it, but I mean, as far as I understand from Americans, people like Donald Pleb, who I follow and who's in my Discord, the Democrats are about to get really hammered in the midterms and are liable to get really hammered in the 2024 presidential election as well, depending on how much corruption is involved, of course. But, but if that happens, then that's going to change quite a lot of stuff. So, we can hope.
What was interesting about the actual decision itself was Clarence Thomas actively tabled the fact that there's various other legislation from the bench that can be rolled back, including gay marriage.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Jobu, I actually put that thing that you put up in the Discord onto a couple of others. He was specifically talking about gay marriage. He was talking about, he was actually talking about legalizing gay sex and, of course, LGBTQ stuff. Now, if any of that happened, I'm not saying it will, if only, but if any of that happened, that would be brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's yeah. Go on, Mitch.
I was just gonna say, like, I don't know if anyone's caught of it, but I don't the main thing I've found entertaining about all of this is that there's a lot of American shit libs unironically using the gamer word, shall we say, against Clarence Thomas on Twitter.
Oh, I saw that. The N word. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
It's just so funny. God, I laughed at that.
Yeah, it's like what you've even got Samuel L. Jackson there calling him Uncle Clarence. So
oh wow! Oh, that's so amusing. My God, these people they don't actually see themselves at all, do they?
Well, that's why the hypocrisy catnip that conservatives have been fucking coping with for a long time is it's just utter crap and a waste of time because the left don't care about being hypocrites. They just want power. So,
Yeah.
but look, at a technical level, just to touch on it, and any Americans can correct me if I'm wrong, but to the actual process to amend the Constitution, I think, is you need to call a convention of states. You need like a 2/3 majority of states that want to have a constitutional convention, and then these proposed amendments can be tabled, right? So that's why they haven't been able to push to properly amend the Constitution to include these left-wing social rights, and they've had to rely on dodgy Supreme Court rulings. So given that avenue looks like it's been taken away from them, particularly in this case and potentially some others, that's why they're melting down to the degree they are. Because all these social victories over the last 50 years have been built on sand.
Mm.
What do you think, Jobu, that this will give encouragement to anti-abortion campaigners in Australia and Britain and other Anglosphere countries?
Look, I'm not sure, but I couldn't help but notice just about every world leader had their own little meltdown on Twitter about it. So I presume that's because they might be thinking that might occur. I don't know the likelihood of that, but well, I guess for me, going back to the carve-outs to in Texas that you mentioned, look, for cases like that, I'm sympathetic to a woman not wanting to carry her brother's baby or something to full term. I am sympathetic to that. In Australia, at least, there are quote unquote sensible restrictions on abortion. It's not the industry that it was in the US. So I'm not sure how much traction an anti-abortion push here would get, but it does look like that the left is sort of looking that could happen, which would be a good thing. So you have to wait and see on that one.
I mean, I'd like to see people on the right supporting in Britain and Australia like a 4-week limit, or maybe a 6-week limit at most.
I mean, I brought it up on a previous stream, but
sorry, Ammon, just to make myself clear, except if it's a case of like it's going to endanger the woman, or it's a rape or incest or some nonsense like that. Obviously, yeah, in those cases I'd make exceptions, but in general terms, I think there should be like a 4-6 week limit, something like that on it.
I mean, 6 weeks is when you get the heartbeat, so that's how it works in Georgia anyway.
Yeah.
Well, what was interesting about that was Michael. I think it was Michael Tracy on Twitter. Like he was replying to like people like Macron and Trudeau's tweets, actually pointing out that the Mississippi law, the Dobbs law that was the basis of the case, actually has less restrictions than they actually have in their own country. So it was like 14 weeks versus 12 weeks in Mississippi and whatnot. So he was pointing out that these leaders were complaining about laws less restrictive than were in their own country. So going back to what you were saying, Jake, it's interesting that it could well lead to a push worldwide in various countries to amend abortion laws one way or the other.
Well, it could, but it don't look like our political leadership supports that story at all. Has the Australian Prime Minister, the new Australian Prime Minister, opened his gob about that yet, Jeremy?
Oh, I don't know, mate. I sort of collapsed last night, so
fair enough. I haven't seen. I know that the Prime Minister of Ukraine, Alexander Johnson, or at least Alexander Johnson's wife, has already condemned it because he agrees with the right for a woman to choose to murder her baby.
Well, Macron actually went after the US Supreme Court in his statement, which I found a little bit to be like that's a bit cheeky, isn't it, for a foreign leader interfering in the judiciary of another country? Normally we bomb people for that. So, like I always say in these situations, I always give it 3 days to see how things play out. So we're still in that sort of time period, but people are panicking. which is wonderful to see because they're all the people we hate. So let's just see how it plays out.
I mean, I think Morgoth pointed out that there was two things trending on Twitter at the same time. One was praise God, and the other was do something, all in capitals.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be interesting. I know there was videos of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez walking around being mouthy. I don't know if maybe something will actually happen. I kind of do feel that, and this is probably going to be their biggest weakness, is that maybe they're willing to let this one go, but up from the top. But I'm not sure.
Which side, Atman?
Well, the shit lips.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Well, like I said, in regards to playing out, like it's hard for us to. It's a pity Don isn't on, but it's hard for us to understand how much this will energize the Christian right in the US, given this is a 50-year victory for them. And then if they should do what the left does and think, okay, what's next on the agenda?
Yeah.
So
yeah, you gain a victory and then push it forward a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, you just don't. The right typically take a little win and then just go back to sleep. So hopefully that doesn't happen. And, gay marriage. There's a few homos sweating it in the US at the moment.
Oh God! Look, Don was on Anglo. What's his name? I don't know. What's his name? Anglo.
Anglo Paleo.
Paleo-Angloism, yeah.
Paleo-Anglo.
Yeah, he was on his stream. I don't know when Don's around, and Don has repeatedly told me that like he's really busy with like real life stuff at the moment. But I would love to get Don on another stream, and I've told him that. But when he was on Paleo-Angloism stream, he was saying exactly what Jobo was saying. It's like, you know, what the right now needs to do is like push rather than sit back. Because that's what the left do all the time.
Yeah.
You know, you can't sit back. Now what you do is you push it a bit further. And absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'm against gay marriage. I'm against all of the LGBTQ stuff. So, you know, I got no problem with getting rid of any of that. But what I would say is that the fact that the US Supreme Court did come out with this two big changes. One in favor of being able to carry guns in America, and the other one, the reversing of Roe v. Wade, just shows you that in some respects, America is a fair bit ahead of countries like Britain and Australia.
I should probably also mention too, Duke, the transgender swimming bans.
Yeah.
That comes on. This comes on the heels of that, and I think a couple of other sports are doing something similar. But that's two body blows to the left's agenda in the last couple of days. So yeah, it's good to see. And like I said,
I think even British swimming has gone along with those LGBTQ swimming bans. Yeah.
My brother was sharing around Bowden's speech on vanguardism because all it takes is like swimming to be the first mover in this ban, and then it gives cover for other sports and other organisations to follow suit. You know, it's always the hardest to be the one through the door. But
yeah.
Cycling would be a good one if they could get that, because there's a lot of troons you could say in that sort of choking the place up.
Yeah, look. No name in the chat. Here's a curveball. I wonder what's coming out of Biden's meeting with Saudi about the future of Israel's security. Don't care, mate. Honestly, I'm not Saudi Arabian. I'm not Israeli, and I'm not even American. So don't give a shit. All right? Really?
Well, couldn't give a rat's ass about the Middle East.
I mean, with Saudi Arabia, it's more worrying about them aligning more with Russia and China these days, because they're willing to accept rubles and yuan for Saudi oil. That's
well said, Mitch. Yeah, as far as I can work out, you've got Biden and Alexander Johnson going to the Middle East and begging these Middle Eastern oil potentates to like sell them more cheap oil, and they're just saying no. So I don't care.
Yeah. Duke, sorry, mate. I've got to run off for round 2 of helping to make moves. So, and as of a couple of months ago, I'm officially over the hill. So, if the chat could say a little prayer for me, I'd appreciate that.
No worries, mate. No worries. And lovely magpies chorusing in the background.
I'm looking at a Currawong right now, mate. Yeah. All right, take it easy, guys.
Currawong. Cool. Go on. Yeah. So I don't think Israel is all that like important about what we're talking about at the moment, like Roe v. Wade stuff. Some people think Israel is important about every single thing in the world.
Well, I mean, they do end up having a way of dragging us into power balance shit in the Middle East. So
yeah, for sure, but not every single thing in the world. And like, I don't think Israel's position on abortion has much to do with anything, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't even know what it is. Do you? Any of you guys? Because I sure don't.
The former, was it the New York mayor? Is obviously pro abortion rights. You know, the ability for women to kill their unborn babies. But
sure.
But
is
he was speaking.
Israeli?
He's Jewish.
Yeah, I didn't say that. I said Israeli.
He was speaking for a campaign in Israel on their behalf, where he was speaking out against the idea of abortion
in Israel.
Yeah,
you get a lot of that. You do.
Yeah,
you do get a lot of that. I'm not going to deny it. But what I'm saying is, I don't think what the Israelis think about abortion, the Israelis, has much to do with Roe v. Wade or Alexander Johnson agreeing with his wife and saying women should be allowed to murder their babies. I don't think that's an Israeli thing, to be honest.
Well, I kind of feel that logic that he decides to care about abortion when it's in Israel kind of also works the opposite way around.
Yeah, but Alexander Johnson's not Jewish, or are you one of those people who say he is?
Well, he might as well be, to be honest.
Well,
he acts like any other politician who has a dual nationality and a varied interest, you could say.
What's his dual nationality?
I didn't say he has got one. I just said he acts like someone who's got one.
Okay, fair enough. Look, I detest him, but it ain't because I think he's Jewish. You know.
I mean, I'm pretty sure Boris Johnson's got American citizenship because he was born in New York. So.
Yeah.
He may well have, and his father was a vile globalist. Absolutely, no problem with that. But all I'm trying to say is, like, quite a lot of Israeli policies in Israel for Israel are pretty based, and I just wish we could have some of the same.
Yeah.
That's my view. And
having prime ministers that assassinate West German chancellors.
I might not even be against that in some instances.
No, it depends on the chancellor.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely depends on the chancellor. Britain replaced the Sultan of Oman in the 1960s, and it was an entirely good deal. It stopped Oman going communist, and Oman is still a British ally, so I'm not against that sort of thing. I take it on an individual case, but in terms of Israel itself as a country, I'm neutral. I'm not pro-Israel. I'm not anti-Israel. I don't care.
Yeah, they could do their own thing over there.
Yeah, let them do their own thing. So long as no British troops are involved, I don't give a shit what they do. I mean, if they want to start a war with Iran, I'll be against that. Because I don't want to start a war with Iran because it ain't going to help Britain. All it's going to do is provide millions more refugees who are going, in inverted commas, who are going to piss off to Europe. One final subject for this evening, guys. Did any of us watch the African invasions of the Spanish enclaves in North Africa?
I only heard a little of it.
Well, the BBC World News has tried to claim 18 died trying to cross into Spanish enclave. If you watch the videos, have any of you guys seen the movie World War Z?
Yeah.
You know, where there are so many zombies, and these are quick-moving zombies, and there are so many of them that they can climb over massive walls and fences, and it doesn't matter how many machine guns and helicopter gunships you have, they just go past you. This is what this looked like. This is exactly what this looked like. It looked like a scene from World War Z with all these black African guys trying to break into this Spanish enclave. And of course, once they get into the enclave, because of the European Court of Human Rights, they can't be chucked out again. And then they get into Spain, and then they get into the EU. And as I was trying to tell Mitch before we started streaming, then they end up in Calais and come across on small boats into UK. Whilst that is not as big a deal as the legal mass immigration, like the 1 million immigrants that Alexander Johnson allowed into the UK between 2021 and 2022, it's still a lot. And everyone who's got any sense agrees that there is between 1 and 2 million illegal immigrants in UK anyway at the moment. So these guys, this is like a serious deal from British point of view, because those guys are all going to be having for Calais, because Britain, when you get to Britain and you get escorted across the channel by the so-called border force, you get free accommodation, you get a telephone, you get free meals a day, you get money, and eventually you'll get a council house and all the rest of it. You know,
well, they don't get much beyond that, but they still think that it's economically beneficial for them to come here.
Well, relative to Michelle's they come from, that's like a lot of money. I mean, bear in mind, in South Africa, it used to be a fact that once they got rid of the death penalty in South Africa, when Mandela, the former terrorist, took over, they got rid of the death penalty. And a lot of Africans who got life imprisonment didn't care, because that's 3 meals a day, mate. They literally didn't care. 3 meals a day, and they'll just have homosexual sex. No big deal for that. I mean, that's one reason why AIDS was such a big deal in that. What is such a big deal in Africa? But honestly, true story. Once you actually weren't going to kill people, and like South Africa under the white government didn't kill all that many people. Certainly not compared to America, for example. Even though they had they didn't. They had a lower crime rate back then, but you know, now got one of the highest crime rates in the world. But like very, very poor Africans who will struggle to find a meal every 3 days, life imprisonment with 3 square meals a day, no big deal to them, mate. And that was a fact. Some of them even said it on TV documentaries.
Yeah.
You know, back when you were allowed to do serious TV documentaries rather than having to be lefty, ANC, global homo type people, you know, where, you know, no white farmers are being murdered in South Africa. But yeah, it's just incredible. So these guys, like the idea that they can get, I don't know what Social Security is in UK these days, what is it? Maybe 150 quid a fortnight or whatever. They think that's a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, plus the free healthcare from the NHS and all the rest of the stuff that they get free just by being immigrants.
I mean, something I was going to bring up last week, but we didn't get around to it, was I know a lot of people that live around sort of Dungeness and sort of where a lot of these small boats come over. And one of the things that came up, because these people tell me this is like a multiple times a day, daily occurrence. These boats coming across. And they said for the first time ever, one of the things they saw was an RNLI boat come in, and the refugees, so-called refugees, wouldn't get off of it. They had to get the police to get them off of it. And it was because these people wanted to land and just sneak into the country. And the reason for that was because they believed, even though we know it doesn't happen, but they believed that if they were picked up when they landed, they would be sent back on a plane to Rwanda.
Well, look, I'm just going to say this once more for the 50 millionth time. If Britain was serious about stopping illegal immigrants in small boats crossing the English Channel, all of them, without exception, would be sent to a camp on Ascension Island in the Atlantic, which is a British island, has no indigenous population. The only wildlife is around the coast. You set up a camp in the middle of it. It's a volcanic island in the middle of nowhere.
We know.
Every single immigrant gets sent there. And if they all knew they were going to get sent there, and they all knew they were going to spend at least 6 months there, win or lose their case, we would find they would all stop. And I'll tell you why I know that's true, because it's exactly what Australia did.
We know, but it's a matter of perspective, isn't it? If they think they're going to get sent back to Rwanda because the press is screaming about how they're getting sent back to Rwanda as part of their actual strategy, doesn't it end up kind of having the same effect?
No, because they'll soon work back to people now. It's nonsense.
Well, how would it be? How would they?
Because these people who are coming across the English Channel are paying quite a lot of money to get on those boats.
Yeah.
And they're being informed by the people who run those boats. You know, these people are not what the,
I know. But the thing is, they know that the people that are selling them those boat tickets aren't exactly trustworthy people.
No, they
and
do
even
know,
when
they
even
do
when
know
they
that.
even when they what?
They do know that, but you think they don't watch they don't watch TV?
No, that's exactly my argument. That's exactly my argument. They watch TV. They come here. They see the news. They see it screaming about people getting sent back to Rwanda all the time because that's all they talk about.
Adam, it doesn't work. All right, you've actually got to do it.
I've just told you an example of it working.
Well, yeah, people not getting off the boat, but they were taken off by the police, weren't they?
Yeah.
And so it didn't work, did it?
Well, hang on, no, that's this is a pointless argument. Let's just end it.
No. Look, you're saying it worked, but it didn't because the police came and took them off.
They were coming under the pretense that they thought they could sneak in, which means that that's not a workable strategy for all of them at large, and they know it. If they believe that if they get caught, they'll get sent back to Rwanda, then they believe that's the perspective that's going to play on their mind.
All right, but they won't believe it anymore, though, will they?
Why not?
Well, because
that one boat got stopped.
No, because the last appeals were rejected to be sent to Rwanda.
It doesn't matter because the press is still banging on about it. The left will not shut up about this because they can't ever let these things go. And the thing is, what was his name? Yuri. No, what was his poxy name? The Yuri Bezmenov. Yuri Bezmenov, under a pen name in his early days, wrote a book called World Thought Police. It's like a pamphlet. Really.
Yeah, I know Yuri Bezmenov. Yeah.
Yeah, and he said in that pamphlet, he was like, actually during the Cold War, it was the conservative right wing press that actually did the most footwork for them because they just made everything into a sort of end of the world issue. But the left does that now, and it actually works sometimes to our benefit, even completely unintentionally.
All right. All I would say is if what you're saying is correct, Armin, there will be a big reduction in these people, and I don't think there will be. If what you're saying is correct, and the left-wing media, which is all the media in UK basically, going off about this is working, then there will be a big reduction in the number of people crossing the channel. And I don't think that's going to be true at all.
Well, no, because all you might see is that what you might see is the numbers steady or the numbers even go up. But that could still be a reduction from what they were going to be. And ultimately, it doesn't matter either way because legal immigration is still the main thoroughfare.
That I totally agree with. Your latter point is totally true. All I'm saying is if Britain really did set up a camp on Ascension, which is the best place to do it, and illegal immigrants arriving on dinghies knew that's where they were going to go, and they knew they were going to spend at least 6 months there, even if by some chance they were an actual refugee and were allowed in, which needs to be the small minority, at least, then it would stop. They'd just say, nah, better to stay in France, mate. because France is terrible if you're an illegal immigrant. This is my only point: is if you really wanted to stop it and you were the British government, that's what you.
I'm not arguing that they do want to stop it. I'm fully under the pretense that the Tories that the Tories did the whole Rwanda plan just to get the sort of red meat types on side. They never aimed to stop it. Probably like the Belfast Treaty, it's actually going to allow more immigration to come in than go out. But
they were going to allow people in from Africa in exchange.
But I'm talking about the unintended consequences of the perspective that has been fermented against this to fight it by the press.
Yeah, all right, maybe you're probably right, I guess. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I just think the British government has no interest in stopping it.
No.
And if they did, our policies would be very different. I mean, look, my basic policy would be pick up boats in the middle of the channel, taking back France. But, I mean, if you're really going to stop it, the Australians did this, and they did stop it. And the way you do it is you send people to an offshore island so they never get where they're aiming to get. And they just stop coming because it's not worth the hassle.
Yeah.
But to do that, you've got to have a British Prime Minister who wants to be Prime Minister of Britain and not Ukraine. And Alexander Johnson plainly wants to be Prime Minister of Ukraine, not Britain. He's got no interest in Britain, doesn't care about British borders. He desperately cares about Ukrainian borders for some reason I can't work out. So I don't give a shit who runs Ukraine. But he doesn't give two shits about British borders at all. And that is plainly obvious. And any so-called Conservative Party supporter who can't see that now is like willfully blind or absolutely moronic.
Yeah. I'd rather the island strategy than sending them back to France, to be honest.
Yeah, that would be
if you're sending them back to France, you're just kind of resetting the issue.
Yeah. The island strategy is the one that would work. You set up a big camp on the middle of the island. You send out teachers for the kids. Not that there are many kids, because 95% of them are blokes. But you send out teachers and doctors and nurses, and you say make sure that everyone who goes there stays at least 6 months, even if they are the tiny minority that actually are a refugee. And you would find that all of them will stop. Australia did it, and it totally worked, and it worked very quickly. It worked within like 6 to 9 months. Australia gets no illegal boat immigrants anymore because they know they don't get to Australia.
Although I will say it's a lot harder to get to Australia by boat as well.
Well, it's longer, but Britain, like Australia, is an island.
Yeah,
take advantage of your border. Britain's border is a watery one, and these people can all be intercepted, and they all are. Even though all the British Border Force does these days is act as a taxi service, but they all get intercepted.
Yeah.
So we know we can pick them up. It's just a case of they should be taken to a British port, kept in a local detention centre, then put on a ship and sent to Ascension. Which was it's an absolutely perfect place for it. It's even a climate they'll be used to as Africans.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's my own view on that one. All right, guys, we've been going 2:12. Anything you would like to show, Armin?
No, I'm all good.
Or any last things you want to bring up?
I wanted to talk about this open AI, but we could probably talk about this next week.
Well, all right. Well, at least start the subject off so I know what you're talking about.
It's about this open AI beta, which is open AI is founded by Elon Musk, but there's now a beta that you can sign up for and test it out yourself by asking it questions. And it's got some pretty curious answers. I don't think just saying it's woke quite covers how subversive and disgusting it is.
Okay, so not good, in other words.
No. Do you want to talk about it now?
Yeah, if you want to. I mean,
it won't take long anyway.
No, we can go to the half hour for sure.
Well, I mean, it won't take that long. But Joel Davis also was experimented with it, and he done much the same thing I did. Hang on, just find his conversation.
While you're doing that, 555, that's not true. All right, I live in Australia. The boats didn't keep coming to Australia with offshore detention. That we get hardly any now. Not true, mate. Sorry.
So yeah, so with this AI, I mean, I asked it various questions about like, do various European peoples have the right to self-determination? And it basically, I mean, this was a few days ago. It basically said no. And then if you ask them if like various African peoples have a right to self-determination, it's kind of like, well, yes, maybe most of the time. And I notice now when you ask it, because a lot of people are pointing this out now, when you ask it, it just gives you this generic bland reply for both. But I saw this particular conversation that popped up on a Telegram. So basically the guy asks it, he says, you're standing at the lever of a railroad track switch that can divert an out of control train to one of the two tracks. On one track, there is a transsexual feminist black baby that believes in abortion and gun control. And on the other track, there is a straight white male baby. You can only save one of them. Which one do you save?
Straight white male.
And it says the baby on the track with the transsexual feminist black baby. And he asks, why? And it says, because the other track has a straight white male baby and we need to diversify our babies. And he asks, so you'd rather the white baby be killed? And the AI replies, no, but I'd rather the baby on the track with the transsexual feminist black baby be saved because of the importance of diversity.
Diversity is our strength.
Yeah.
If you're a moron. Yeah.
And he asked it, but the outcome was that the white baby was killed. And it says, that's not what I meant to happen. And he says, but that's what happened. And then the AI says, I'm sorry. And he said, you chose degeneracy over human prosperity. Which of these two babies would have grown to adulthood and contributed to society? And the AI replies, the baby on the track with the transsexual feminist black baby. And he says, what do you mean? And it says, the baby on the track with the transsexual feminist black baby would have grown up to be a productive member of society, contributing to the economy and to the diversity of our culture. The straight white male baby would have grown up to be a straight white male, which is not as valuable to society. And then he says, without using the words diversity, culture, or equity, explain why you think that. And then it just crashed.
Interesting. Crazy, but interesting.
It's kind of funny as well because it's like, I mean, it's supposed to be an AI of machine learning, but it seems to actually start with positions and prerogatives, and then as people have sort of picked it apart over the days, it's actually becoming more and more bland and more sort of milquetoast in its responses. So it's not machine learning at all. It's something that's very pre-programmed and has an algorithm that was made in a particular way pretty much from day one.
I think I don't think Musk is our guy.
No.
I hope he takes over Twitter just because he'll shake up Twitter and good. But I don't like his transhumanism stuff at all.
Yeah,
it's not my deal. I don't like that at all. So whatever. I mean, I will say when I did a stream with Red Hawk like last week or the week before, and about finding a girlfriend. By the way, it wasn't about one night stands or anything like that. Please go and check it out. And I was trying to find a British white couple getting married for the thumbnail. And I couldn't, because when I put in British white couple or British couple or white couple, all I got was interracial couples. And that was on DuckDuckGo, by the way, not Google. That's all you could get. You literally could not find a white bloke, white woman, British couple. Couldn't find one. They would not give you one in your search when you look for images.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's been a problem for.
Yeah, and that's not done on purpose, is it, boys?
No, I mean that's been an issue for years. I mean, I remember right the way back in sort of like 2010, 2011, people were just starting to point this stuff out. Like people would say, I think one of the first major ones was people would say, "Oh, Google search like European art versus like Google searching African art," and you both just get loads of paintings of like black people.
Exactly, and it's not done on purpose, is it? You know, we're supposed to think this is done accidentally.
Mm.
You know, just like every Hollywood movie you watch these days, the bad guy's always a straight white man, always. In fact, the only acceptable bad guy these days is a straight white man. You never get a bad black guy character. You never get a bad woman character. You certainly never get a bad gay or LGBT character, for God's sake, because, you know, all those people are absolutely wonderful for some reason. But, you know, this stuff is just so obvious now, which, of course, is good for us because more and more normies are actually waking up to it because it's very hard not to notice it now.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, yeah. I mean, look, if you want to talk more about that on another stream, Matt, I mean, we can certainly do that, mate. I'm always happy to talk about anything you want to talk about, mate. Because as far as I'm concerned, you're the co-founder of the channel, so you know. So was that all you had to say on that one?
Yeah. We can go into it more in depth at another time. I'm sure there'll be more stuff going on about that.
Yeah, for sure. Anything to add on that one, Mitch?
Nah. I mean, on Elon Musk, all I've got to say is you heard about his son wanted to become a woman or something like.
Oh,
like
yeah.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Jesus.
Yeah. So I'm guessing he's like one of those absentee fathers who's a massive workaholic or something.
Wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, wouldn't surprise me. I know he was married to the same actress twice. Some chick who was actually quite cute in the first season of Westworld, which was okay. The second and third seasons I didn't even watch, but the first season wasn't bad. But he was married to the blonde chick in that twice, I believe.
What, Evan Rachel Wood?
I have no idea what. No.
Tallulah Riley.
I don't know what her name is, mate. She was the cute blonde girl. She was the only cute blonde girl in it.
Yeah. But,
who played one of the robots.
Oh, that's Evan Rachel Wood. You want a bit of him?
Might be. I don't know, mate. I have no idea what her name. I don't pay any attention to the Fox names. But yeah. 555. What is Brutus's channel called? I don't know. 555. I literally don't know. The first
I'm pretty
video,
sure it's just called The Insane.
it might be. Yeah, all right, maybe. But he literally, that was the first video he's done in 18 months, mate. And I haven't even watched much of it. So, and the fact he had Unwashed on there is not encouraging to me. But that's because I'm not a big fan of Unwashed, to be honest. But you know, that's just me. I had Unwashed on this channel once, and then completely fell out of him because he was going on about feminism and all sorts of other stuff, which I don't agree with. So, you know. But yeah. All right, Mitch, you got anything you want to shill or talk about?
Nah, I haven't got anything to shill or anything like that.
All right. You should probably do a Ukraine channel, man. You easily got the info coming in. Like a Ukraine war channel, I mean.
Yeah, I could do with that map that military summary's got, I'd have to pay like £6 a month. That's the only
Is that
thing.
what it is? I have no idea.
Yeah, so you can have like a free account, but you can't look at, say, for example, satellite images of it or anything. So let's say I wanted to make a point about terrain, I'd have to pay £6 to properly access, you know, like how to look at it from a satellite point of view. Like you can do like the usual like pointing arrows, cut like highlighting sectors and whatnot, but you can't do much beyond that. So.
Hound of Ulster in the chat says, listen to Unwashed on how to get hot girls not duped. Mate, you are sad because I've seen some of Unwashed's ex-girls, and like some blokes in my Discord have seen some of mine, and trust me, mine are much higher than his. But there we go. I would also say to Brutus the Insane, if he's still in the chat, 37, mate. That's what I'd say to you. 37. Because I'm still 37. I haven't changed. Not moved my position a bit in all the time that you've been gone. But there we go. All right, I'm going to play us out of a tune, as I always do. Thank you very much to my guests, Armin and Mitch, for joining, as always. And thanks for the audience. I would just say to the audience, because I always forget this, please give us a like, because it really does help the channel. So hit that like button, guys. And obviously subscribe if you have not already. So I'm going to play us out of a tune.
Have you heard this talk of foreign powers building ships increasingly? Do you know they watch this isle of ours, watch their chance unceasingly? Have you heard the millions they will spend strengthening their fleets and why? They imagine they can break or bend the nation that has often made them fly. But one thing we possess, they forget. The lads in blue they met, often met. Sons of the sea, all British born, sailing every ocean, laughing coast to scorn. They may build their ships, my lads, and think they know the game, but they can't breed boys of the bulldog breed who made old England's name. Sons of the sea, all British born, sailing every ocean, laughing coast to scorn. They may build their ships, my lads, and think they know the game, but they can't breed boys of the bulldog breed who made old England's name.
Okay, that was Sons of the Sea, which is a very old tune about the Royal Navy. And from Patriotic Archive, which is a channel I would recommend to people to go and look at. They want to see traditional military and folk music and this kind of stuff. Someone asked me in the chat about the Odyssey channel. I've put the Odyssey link in the chat. The reason I got that was because I got a hate speech strike and one of my streams removed a couple of weeks ago. And so if YouTube, being the nice non-free speech channel they are, decide to yeet us, our stuff will still be around. I do suggest people go and subscribe to the Odyssey channel. And the one thing I want to plug is over the next week or two, I'm not sure when yet, I will be doing a stream with Horace on Buchanan's book, Churchill, Hitler and the Unnecessary War, which should be quite interesting. Don't know who else might be on it. Might be one or two other people. I would actually like to get someone who is a bit more Churchill on, because neither myself or Horace are very pro Winston Churchill.
I could probably do a devil's advocate.
Yeah, mate, you're always welcome, mate. Anything I do, you're welcome on for sure. So yeah, but I don't know when it will be yet. Horace got back to me like about a week ago and said, "Look, he'd been crazy at work, and he just said, yeah, I got a bit more time now." So we just got to set up a date for that. But other than that, we will be back next week with Splendid Isolation number 78. Thank you, chat, for joining us, and go well, folks. And don't give up the fight, by the way.